Hi, everybody. My name is Dr. Nadine Khala, and today I'm going to tell you about using soil moisture sensors to optimize irrigation for newly planted urban forests. Now, before we dive into that, let me just quickly introduce myself. I'm an ecological engineer. I was born in the Netherlands and raised in Canada, and I developed my love for the outdoors from a really young age. But growing up in a typical North American suburb, I really questioned this imbalance that I saw all around me, this imbalance between nature and urban development. And from there, I committed myself to building better urban ecosystems for both people and nature. As an ecological engineer today, I now apply emerging technologies to monitor and reconnect people to urban ecology through a framework that I coined called Internet of Nature. And in today's topic, we are going to dive into one of the most ubiquitous emerging technologies in the smart city discourse today, the Internet of Things. Specifically, Internet of Things soil moisture sensors, which we can use to optimize the irrigation of our urban forests and specifically our newly planted urban trees. But first, let me clarify why we should even be looking underground. Soil is probably one of cities' most undervalued and often invisible resource. We cannot have healthy trees without healthy soil. The future of our urban forestry, of our urban forests and our urban forestry quite literally rests on the health of the soil that is supposed to support all of that healthy vegetation. And research shows that planting more trees in cities grows health and security and wealth, all providing these key ecosystem services like filtering air and sequestering carbon. These benefits are, as we've come to learn throughout these courses and lectures, are very essential to healthy human communities, not just for humans, but for all species. But they are also constrained by the very foundation in which trees grow, namely our soil. And poor soil can limit tree growth. Generally speaking, the older the tree, the more benefits. So anything that's limiting tree growth is definitely not optimal. There's actually an old saying in arboriculture or in urban forestry, which is plant a $5 tree in a $50 hole. And that still rings true today. Soil improvement really is vital to allowing a greater diversity of trees to be planted and ultimately the success of those trees as well. Many municipalities have put sustainability high on their agenda, and the maintenance of existing and planting new trees is often the result of that. And planting new trees is absolutely a critical component to thriving forests, but it demands time and resources and coordination from municipal governments. And urban trees are often viewed as a financial burden or a risk, and the benefits that they provide over time can also be poorly understood and therefore undervalued by the public, or by decision makers. So, if we are to plant and grow new trees in cities to meet all of these future demands, we owe it to them to listen. But what do I mean by listening to trees? Well, I'll get to that in a moment. But let me just first sketch a little bit of the context and the importance. So, when new trees are planted in hopefully good growing conditions, which is definitely the number one thing that we have to look out for, the next most important resource comes into play, which is water. There is no bigger waste than the mismanagement of scarce resources, especially when it comes to water. The leading cause of young urban tree death is a lack of water, and sometimes too much water at the wrong time. In the Netherlands, for example, where I'm from originally and where I'm based now, um, in the Netherlands, we lose 15 to 20% of all young plantings every single year. That's actually become the rule rather than the exception. And across Europe, this statistic is very widespread. In fact, as our summers and springs continue to get hotter and drier, but also just more unpredictable, the availability and the necessity of water definitely increases. Um, Young urban trees especially need all the help that they can get. Typical urban tree plantings come from a nursery in these tightly packed root balls, which helps them fit into small bags for easy handling and transportation. But it takes roughly 2 to 4 years for a young tree's roots to actually unravel and grow deep enough to be able to sustain itself water-wise. And these first few years are absolutely critical, not just to the success of the tree, but also for the tree care manager, who typically carries the cost of removing and replacing dead plantings. Currently, tree watering schedules are estimations that are based on tree species, the location, and weather patterns. And in reality, these estimations mean that some trees receive either too little water too late, while other tree roots actually rot from saturated soil, leading to higher mortality rates among young trees. So, in short, we need real time information to help urban trees survive and thrive. We need to understand when certain trees are getting too little water and when certain trees are getting too much so that we can learn from that and ideally act with the right intentions and with the right data. Now, let's just dive in for a moment into the design of soil sensors. This is really important, and honestly, I could give an entire lecture just on this concept alone. The fact of the matter is that there's a lot of crappy sensors out there, a lot of low cost crappy sensors that would rather provide patterns and data in quantity rather than quality. And I believe when it comes to sensors, data quality is above all else. I'd much rather data quality than data quantity. Now, the soil moisture sensors that I use have been specifically designed for urban public space so that they can be placed invisibly near the tree so that you don't need to deal with concerns of vandalism and the lot. The sensor probe should be placed very precisely where the water really needs to be. So that's typically at about 3/4 depth of the root ball. The sensor units should ideally be what they call circular in design, meaning that they're entire modular with replaceable batteries, so that we can actively also reduce e-waste. The last thing that we want to do is essentially litter our soil with plastic sensors that are low cost and crappy and are not going to give us the data that we need. That is not sustainable by any means, and it's something that we want to avoid at all costs. But since the batteries are replaceable in these sensors that I use, we can measure the soil moisture more frequently, every 20 minutes or so. And this is really critical because it can actually help us distinguish a watering event and irrigation from, for example, a rainfall event, so that municipalities can actually quality control if the watering is being done by a contractor and perhaps give them a heads up if they think they missed a spot or they're not watering appropriately. So let's dive just quickly into a case study. In the Dutch city of Maastricht in the south of the Netherlands, since planting in 2017 of 1,000 linden trees on top of this A2 tunnel, not one of the trees has died in that case study. The reason being is that we installed 3 soil moisture sensors, which consistently monitor the growing conditions of the trees. Basically, the tree care manager is notified when a tree needs water, and this way, not a single tree's soil dries out. And the tree care manager was skeptical at first. In fact, a quote of his is saying, "After 40 years in the business, I've developed a sixth sense for tree watering, but I never would have imagined how much water my new plantings would need during the insanely hot and dry summers of 2018 and 2019. In fact, in my other sites, I lost 15 to 20% of my plantings. That's the industry standard that we talked about before. But on the sensor site, I haven't lost a single tree. These days, the first thing I do is check my dashboard, and then and only then do I check the news." Now, what's great about this project is again, we have 1,000 trees here, all of the same species, and we only needed 3 soil moisture sensors to take care of this entire site. The reason being, of course, is that when you're dealing with the same kind of soil and the same kind of species of trees, you can actually get away with having only 3 soil sensors because basically you can split the site based on drainage conditions into different zones so that you only need to use one sensor per zone and you can extrapolate the sensor information to all the other trees in that zone. The reason why I say this is so important because the goal is always, always, always use the least amount of sensors you can use for the most amount of impact. So every single project, every single site conditions are going to be different, but it's always important to make that calculation for yourself so you're using the least amount of sensors, the most amount of impact. And that's critical so that we maintain a certain overall picture of sustainability. That's so important. Now, a last note that I'll say about post-tree establishment. So another one of keeping these sensors sustainable is actually having them be robust enough that you can use them again. So if after a number of years the monitored tree is thriving and no longer requires that special care, the sensor can actually be transferred to a new location. So water and other missing nutrients are not only critical to helping the tree survive, but watering and aiding the soil as needed means trees can actually grow in optimal soil conditions. And when that happens, they actually can grow 3 times faster. So this is really, really critical in understanding that the sensors that you want to be using are ones that are robust so that you can actually move them to a different spot when you no longer need special care in a certain area. Now, the cool thing about sensors is, as I was saying in the very beginning of this presentation, it's actually about offering us citizens a way to actually listen to what sensors, or sorry, what trees need from us, so that we can actually listen and step in and intervene where necessary. The fun thing about sensors is that that data, whether that's through a tree water alert to your phone or to a dashboard or to your email address, they don't just have to go to those messages, don't just have to go to the tree care manager, but could in fact actually go to the citizens instead. In fact, this is what we did in the Dutch village of Gijstre, where Soil Mania's, the sensors that we're using were installed for trees located in the town square. And instead of the tree managers, neighboring residents actually receive the watering updates, so we can actually promote citizen engagement and participation in tree care. The more data collection better arms us to step in and be better tree stewards, oftentimes before it's too late. Now, the last note that I'll leave you on is, of course, so much of this is about emerging technologies. And who would I be within the emerging technology space if I didn't bring up the crucial and potential role of artificial intelligence? Now, the fact of the matter is, now that we understand when and where certain trees need water, we've been collecting this data for the past 5, 6 years at this point. So we know now that based on this dashboard, we can see at a quick glance when and where we need to water. Not too much and not too little, so that we only give water when water is absolutely necessary. But with the help of artificial intelligence machine learning, we can actually take that a step further. So now we can actually use these soil moisture measurements that we've collected over the past 5, 6 years and combine that with information that we have on the tree, on the soil, and on the weather patterns, so that we not only know when a tree is going to be thirsty now, but in fact, when and where trees might be thirsty in 48 hours for X amount of liters of water. And with this solution, we go a lot further than just being able to plan out the actions for that day, but perhaps being able to plan out the actions for an entire week. And once we've done that, well, the possibilities are absolutely endless, because what we've managed to do then is that we've taken technology that allows us to be a little bit, smarter in how we react to things. It can completely change the sector of urban forestry from one that is very reactive to one that is much more proactive. Ultimately, the soil sensor, much like any other Internet of Nature technology, is not going to influence the weather or keep pests away. But sensors may be the most direct line of communication that we've got. Understanding exactly which tree we should water when and uncovering soil's needs, which coincide with trees' needs, is the first step that we need to take towards proactive tree care. The possibilities for automation and smarter tree care really are endless, and ultimately, the savings it will yield are even greater. I hope my ultimate goal that this leads to is an ecosystem where trees are not only planted, but we don't only plant trees, but we grow trees. We grow trees for future generations so that we can fully really start to understand all the benefits that these trees offer us. Using sensors in this way is just one tool that we have in our toolkit to make this happening. So with that, thank you very much for watching.